my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy, sometimes Mouse, and I talk about books and book-related things, and today I am giving you my May wrap-up. As always, I want to give a fair warning and heads up that if you hear any beeping, dog sounds, pets eating, etc., etc., that I live in a zoo and I have very minimal control over those sounds. My second disclaimer for my wrap-ups is that I am filming this a little bit early. So that does mean that anything that I am filming right now may not necessarily, the data may be a book or two off. I don't necessarily think that it is going to be, but I just want to give that disclaimer in case you go to my Goodreads list and you're like, there's some books here, there's some numbers here that don't add up. That would be why. The reason that I'm filming early is because it is my birth week. So I know you guys are probably sick of hearing about my birthday, but I have friends coming into town and I will not be able to film or edit. It is currently May 26th. I'm only reading one book. I just finished another one about 5 minutes ago, so I don't necessarily expect this to be majorly different, but nonetheless, there is that disclaimer for you. Let's go ahead and talk about our stats. This month was exactly the correct number of books that I would like to read in a month. This was exactly how I want my months to go. So I can at least say that from now on, this is really my ideal month. I can base it on May, and I really thought that I had read nothing this month, so I was kind of surprised by the numbers. I, in total, read 28 books, so again, surprising to me, thought that I read nothing. I read a total of 3,024 pages, as I've mentioned before, but if you're new here and you've never seen one of my wrap-ups before, I only count the pages of books that I physically have read. I do not count the pages of books that I listen to as an audiobook. For audiobooks, I listened to 181 hours and 5 minutes, which is about 7 days, 13 hours and some change. I do listen to all my audiobooks on 3x speed, so disclaimer to that. I acquired 17 books, which cost me a total of $92.31. I talk about this in my haul video, but May I saved up kind of my purchasing from the last couple of months and bought almost no books so that I could do this in May for myself. I checked out 15 library books and I had 5 rereads. Of those books, 17 of them were audiobooks, 6 of them were ebooks, 5 of them were physical books. I had an average rating of 3.9 stars. I read an average of 84.6 pages per day and listened to an average of 7 hours and 57 minutes and 36 seconds per day. So it's about 8 hours on average, which tracks to about my shift, right? I work 9 hours a day, so if you count my lunch hour, so that very much tracks to what my daily working schedule looks. All of that lines up. I read 10 middle grade, 7 young adults, and 11 adults, so we have successfully done more adults than young adults this month. I think that it's because I read quite a lot of nonfiction for me, especially nonfiction with a focus on the criminal justice system, so that is definitely going to be adult content and not young adult content. I suppose. I don't know if they have any of these books for young adults. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys know of any. For pages, this one I had to add an extra one that I didn't expect to have to add, and I, off the top of my head, have no idea what book this is. No, I do. That's a lie. I know what book it is. It was an ARC. For books that I read that were less than 100 pages, there was 1. For books between 101 and 200 pages, 1. Books between 201 and 300 pages was 5. It's probably all the middle grade that I read. The 301 to 400 pages was 2, and 401 to 500 pages was 1. And again, that's only counting books that I read that had pages instead of audiobooks. Next up, I'm going to show you my book blanket. It is coming along really nicely. It's getting quite large. I'm very excited about how it's coming along. I think by next month I'll get a good gauge of how big it will be by the end of the year, which is great because obviously next month will be 6 months into the year, so I can base it off of that. Right now, if I put it in my lap up to my hips, it goes all the way down to my feet, so it's a perfect lap blanket right now. It does mean though, because I'm working on it and it's hot in Texas, that I get very warm when I'm working on it. But I am going to go ahead and cut to showing you the book blanket and giving you those stats. I read a total of 16 fantasy, 3 thriller, 3 horror, 1 romance, 1 contemporary, and then 4 nonfiction. This was a very fantasy heavy month this month. My book blanket is now at a total of 168 rows, which is wild if you think about it. And I have worked on it for a total of 1 day, 16 hours, 29 minutes, and 6 seconds. So that is a lot of time. So that is a total of 40 hours. If you think about it, that is a work week. So it currently measures to, and it weighs this much. And like I said before, it is an accurate sized lap blanket. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how that has come about. When I was doing the mood blanket, this month is the month that I quit working on it, so I'm excited that I have finished the month of May and now I am doing June. It just means that I've gone past the point from my last attempt at this, and I think I'm actually gonna have a blanket at the end. And I think I might, because I'm enjoying this so much, I think I might actually do this again next year, but with pastels. These colors are great, but the colors that I've chosen were my original wedding colors, and then I eloped. So obviously I eloped in October, so that was already the end of the year, right? But so I could have picked a different color scheme, but I had all of this yarn already from the mood blanket, so it was kind of like, I'm not gonna waste it. It's a lot of yarn, and it is a lot of yarn. For my top and worst book of the month, I have some good ones, definitely have some good ones. I also have nonfiction on this list. I would like to include probably all of the nonfiction that I've read this month, but I will withhold from doing so. I know that we have talked before about me including arcs, at least 2 arcs that I liked a lot and would include as a top 5 read. Unfortunately, I haven't really had arcs that I would consider top 5 reads, which is really unfortunate. I think I said unfortunately, sorry, but the closest that I have would be Let the Mountains Be My Grave. That was a really good novella. It was the one that is less than 100 pages, and I enjoyed it a lot, but I wouldn't necessarily consider it in my top 5 just because my top 5 has some books that I liked a lot. So I just want to explain why I kind of seem to have moved away from doing that in my wrap-ups. It's because there's just not always arcs that I feel deserve, that's not the right word, that I personally would have included in my top 5. Especially because I like to go through my top 5s of each month at the end of the year and then use those to talk about my best books of the year. And if I'm including books that I don't necessarily think need to be there, then it's just going to be confusing for me at the end of the year. So anyway, that was enough excuses and explanations on my part. My top book of the month, 100% top book of the month, like normally I don't do them in any order, but this is my top book of the month, is definitely going to be I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. I love this author first. I have loved everything that they have written, and I enjoy following them on TikTok, and I enjoy those things. I am not a romance reader by any means, and you guys know that. I would heavily recommend Casey McQuiston's romance, which is unusual for me, so take that how you will. But Casey's writing always includes some level of humor that I can heavily relate to. This book is a young adult romance, and I believe it is their first young adult. And this wasn't even in my planned reads for the month, but I had set up my pool and I was like, you know what would be the perfect book to read out by the pool? It would be reading a romance book. I think romance books are perfect to read at the pool or at the beach, etc. I think those are the perfect books for that. Sometimes they're good for by a fireplace, but not always. This book is about Chloe Green, who is nuts. She's nuts. She will go on these long monologues about Shara Wheeler is so pretty, and she's the prettiest girl that's ever lived, and she smells so good, and you know what, the flavor of her lip gloss is the best flavor I've ever tasted, and everything she does is great and fantastic, and how dare she be so perfect. Anyway, I hate her. I hate her, and she's my arch nemesis, and I do not like her at all, and I hate her. And it's just very funny to me. The whole thing was funny to me. And it's the conversation about identities and discovering who you are, and how small towns really kind of prevent that, and how religious towns absolutely prevent that. And having grown up in those communities, I very much understand and like that we had that conversation a little bit. It didn't go as in-depth as it could have and possibly should have, but it's a young adult book as well. So I think touching it on a surface level, especially in a romance that definitely is it's comedy to me. I thought it was funny. A rom-com-esque book. I don't think it's fair to ask it to go in depth into those topics. I had moments where I hated Cheryl Wheeler just as much as Chloe Green did, and then I had moments where I loved her and thought she was a little psycho, and I loved that for her. And I still love that for her. I support women's wrongs when it comes to some of those things. She was just doing her best in the society that she had, you know? I also, having grown up in a Christian private school, not on that scale, but I get it. I do get it. I do. It was a fun book, and I highly recommend it, especially if you're a romance reader and you are looking for a young adult romance, so something that's not necessarily with smut, then this is definitely going to be the one. The second book that I put in my top 5 is going to be Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. This is just like a comfy read. It's just, there's not, like, there's drama, but not like, you don't get scared for anybody. It's just like comfy and cozy. Cozy is the word. It's a cozy fantasy read. And I just enjoyed it so much, and I just wanted the characters to live their best little lives and have their best little cafe in the whole world and be happy, and that was it. That was all I wanted for them. And I thought, you know, a lot of the time when the author reads their own audiobook, it is not good, but Travis did a really fantastic job with this. I think that they did a great job reading it, and I think that they did a great job writing it, obviously, because this is in my top 5. This was just a really fun book, and it is short. It is a snack-sized book, so if at any point you feel like you want something that's just cozy and non-stressful and fantasy and you don't want to think too hard about it, then this is definitely going to be a book for you. It is just a fun read. Then we have The Strange Worlds Travel Agency by L.D. Lipinski. I'm actually including the entire trilogy here. I had so much fun reading these. The entire concept is fantastic, that the suitcases take you to a mysterious world, and our main character is helping another main character try and find his dad, and like what happened to him, and the way that magic works in this world, and what she is, etc. And I appreciated that we have this older brother type relationship with the main character. Obviously I can't remember their names right now, I'm sorry. With the main male character, but there isn't a romantic dynamic. And I appreciate that so heavily. The reluctant older brother dynamic, they don't need to date. It's not necessary, and so I really appreciated that. Then I had kind of one that surprised me. I expected this to not be a very good thriller, and it ended up being a fantastic thriller. It is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. It's very akin to like Gone Girl energy. This husband and wife decide to go be serial killers together, essentially, but things go wrong very quickly, and the husband is starting to kind of figure it out. It is from the husband's perspective. I don't know why, but I expected kind of dual perspectives. We don't get dual perspectives. It is from his perspective only. And that kind of adds some fun layering to it because she is so much smarter than him, period, point blank. I did not like the ending though. The ending was really frustrating to me, and there were moments where it dragged. The ending was frustrating to me because I support women's wrongs, and I did not like the ending. And that's all I have to say about that because I don't want to spoil it, but it was very good, surprisingly good. Obviously, the man's dialogue and the things that he does sucked, and you should look into if there's any triggers because I just don't know, but it is a thriller with murder, so take that information how you will. And for the 5th book this month, it is going to be a nonfiction called We Do This Till We Free Us by Mariam Kaba. This is a book about abolitionism, and it's kind of an entry-level book, right? So if you're new to this concept, if you're new to conversations about the criminal justice system, I would highly recommend this book. Whether you agree with abolitionism or not, I would highly recommend this book because it has some information that I think is important without being so stats heavy that it's overwhelming. I've read a couple of books, Are Prisons Obsolete and The New Jim Crow, that are stats heavy, and if that is your thing, then I would recommend those books, but it requires a level of I don't know, it's kind of an unemotional point of view versus We Do This Till We Free Us is not, because it is a series of interviews and writings from this author and from other authors, having a conversation about the effects of the criminal justice system and how we could make this better, predominantly through community and community building. And it kind of brings that into scope from a more emotional standpoint that is a little bit more digestible if you are new to this concept. So I would recommend it if this is like the first time you're hearing about these conversations, or if you're not sure about what I mean when I'm talking about these conversations. I would recommend looking at this book specifically as your entry level, especially if you're someone who doesn't necessarily agree or thinks you don't agree with abolitionism as a whole. It would be beneficial for you to look into this book, just because it might teach you some things that you didn't know. When people say defund the police, like, what does that mean? And what does that do? And what would we do? And what is the genuine goal here? So I think that this book teaches you those things in a way that's consumable without being so many numbers that you're overwhelmed by the concept of how broken our entire system is, except it's not broken. It's working exactly as planned, but broken if you're not the government. Anyway, I would hold that book up because I physically own it, but my mother has it. Then for the worst book of this month, this was a little bit tricky because there are a few books that I DNF'd because I was bored, but I don't necessarily think that makes them bad books. It just means that I didn't personally like them. And then there are some books that I finished and thought, this was fine. There was a 4-star book that I almost considered my worst book, not because the book was bad. It was a horror book and it was good, but the romance made it bad, and so it was very hard to review. And so I almost included that. This book was not one I had planned to read, but I had read the reviews and they were so horribly bad that I wanted to read it. And that is Darling Girl by Liz Mikowski. So full disclosure, I rated it 3 stars. Realistically, it's 2.5 rounded up. And it is a Peter Pan retelling. The reason that people give this such a... I'm going to put this away, I'm done now. The reason that people give this such a negative rap is because people really struggle with Peter Pan being a bad guy. I do not. I hate Peter Pan, the person, and I'm fine with him being a bad guy. Darling by Kay Ingram, perfect example of Peter Pan being horrible. The Katie Roberts book with Hook, what is that one called? I don't know. But that one with Tinkerbell and Hook, perfectly fantastic representation of Peter Pan being fucking horrible. Do I think that Peter Pan probably was horrible? Yes. I think he was not a good person. I think if you're a child for a long time, you're probably not going to be a good person, right? Over time, I just don't think you're going to be. Sorry, I hate to break it to y'all. So I think that is the part that people really struggled with. I also, and this is valid, there should have been trigger warnings. There were no trigger warnings, so this is my giving you a trigger warning that there is assault, there is kidnapping, there is child abuse, there is drug abuse, there is experimenting on involuntary child patients, usage of blood for said experimenting. Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. So that, just, keep that in mind. Was this a bad book? Yes, but no. The concept in this book was very interesting. I don't remember her name. Heidi? No, I don't know. Jane's daughter. So you have Wendy, then you have Jane, and then you have Jane's daughter. Jane's daughter has a daughter named Eden and a son named Jake or Jack or something. And Eden fell from a tree or something, and Eden's growth has always been really weird. Like, she grew really fast and she's incredibly smart and she could probably fly, we're not really sure, question mark. Fell from a tree and was asleep and couldn't wake up. And so they kept her on these machines and stuff and at a house because also when she was awake, it seemed like she was growing a lot faster and they didn't know how much time she was going to have left. So daughter, 3rd generation Peter Pan girl, had also been using her blood to help, because it had healing properties, it was helping keep brother, son, whatever, alive. She gets the news that Eden has vanished, she's disappeared, which shouldn't have happened. So she's thinking that Eden was kidnapped. And so she has to go back home and figure all of that out. And son, brother, whatever his name is, Jake person, does not know about his sister. Does not know that these blood infusions are what's keeping him alive, etc., etc. Cool concept. Very cool concept. Execution, bad. The execution was really bad. It was really boring. I found the characters kind of unbearable. which was astonishing. The characters that I didn't care about, I found unbearable, which was predominantly the main character and her son. I found them annoying and selfish and horrible, horrible people that just whined all the time. I found pretty much everybody else in the book great and interesting. The plot itself took such a long time to get all of that information that I gave you just now, all of that information. You don't have all of it until like 75% in. That's too long for you to get to the point for me. I need all of this like explained by 50% and then us trying to solve stuff in the last 50%. That's what I need for a pacing of the book. This book is too long, period, and then took too long to get to the point, which is not a good execution. And the ending sucked. I thought the ending was lame. I thought that it was a lame cop-out. It made me a little bit more confused about how the magic worked because I had an understanding, and then at the end I was like, I don't really get it. But okay. And then what happened to Peter Pan was stupid. So that's my personal review. I think that execution bad, book boring, concept cool, characters were actually funny and interesting except for the main character and her son. They sucked. Annoying. Bad. Hate them. So that's my worst book of the month, and I wouldn't even necessarily class it as like the worst book, but it is the worst book of the month that I have chosen. So there's that. That is my May wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have you guys read Darling? It was book of the month's like book, and they have advertised it heavily. I've seen it advertised a lot online. So have you guys read it or looked into it and wondered what the fuck is this about? Now you know. You're welcome. Don't read it. It's not worth it. If you want to know how it ends, just message me and I'll tell you. Not in my comments. I won't tell you in my comments. I'm not gonna spoil it. But that's it. Let me know in the comments down below. Anything, really. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share if you enjoyed this video. If you didn't enjoy this video, let me know how I can make it better for you, unless it's about my opinion, and then I can't help you. Or if you guys really love Peter Pan, I don't care. So don't tell me about it, because I don't care. I don't, besties. I also think Wendy, annoying. Super annoying. I wish Tinkerbell had killed her. So, gonna throw that out there. I will see you guys again on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time and Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every single week without fail. Don't forget to drink your meds, drink your meds? Nope. Don't forget to drink your water, take your meds, and do something today to take care of yourself. Okay, thanks, bye.